Good day, everyone. So, for today's topic of crypto report is all about conformity, deviance, and social control conformity. These are the topics to be discussed.
Hi guys, so this is Samantha Samar Banyas, the speaker. So I'm going to discuss here about conformity, which is a very powerful phenomenon in human behavior and sociology. So in this lesson, we're going to discuss here about conformity. So conformity is a type of social influence involving a change in belief or behaviors in order to fit in with a group. So simply, it is the act of matching attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors to group norms, politics, or being like-minded. So when we say norms, norms are implicit, specific rules shared by a group of individuals that guide their interactions with others. So people often choose to conform to society rather than to pursue personal desires, because it is often easier to follow the path others have already made rather than creating a new one. So what I meant here is it is something that from the word conformity, it is something that you're going to change your behavior in order to fit in or go along with the people around you. In some cases, this social influence might involve agreeing with or acting like the majority of people in a specific group, or it might involve behaving in a particular way in order to perceive as normal by the group. So for example, people tend to follow social norms when eating or watching television, even when alone. So if what you see others have already made or have already created, you tend to follow that path because it's much more easier for you to follow than creating a new one. So simply, that what is conformity meant. And in order for you to fit in with a group, like normal, like you're being normal with the group, and like you follow the specific desires that they have and they have made in that specific group. So next we have the types of conformity. So what we have here first is compliance or group acceptance. So this occurs when an individual accepts influence because he hopes to achieve a favorable reaction from another person or group. So this simply means involving changes one's behavior while still internally disagreeing with the group. So you tend to conform what the group has been doing. And you tend to change your own behavior just for you to fit in with the group. So that is what we call compliance. So next is we have internalization, genuine acceptance of group norms. So this occurs when an individual accepts influence because the content of the induced behavior, the ideas and actions of which is composed, is intrinsically rewarding. So this occurs when we change our behavior because we want to be like another person. We want to follow what that person has been doing. Like we tend to be that person, to be that specific person. And it's a way that we change our own behavior just to fit into that person. So that is what we call internalization. Next is we have identification or group membership. So this occurs when an individual accepts influence because he wants to establish or maintain a satisfying self-defining relationship to another person or group. So simply this means that it usually occurs when people conform to what is expected of them based on their social roles. So Zimbaria's famous Stanford prison experiment is a good example of people altering their behavior in order to fit in their expected roles. So however, the experiment has come under intense scrutiny in recent years. So just like me, if I'm going to put myself in this type of conformity, I tend to conform what people has been expected, what people has been expected based on my social rules. So that's why I want to conform for me to fit in to what has been people thinking or what has been people expected based on my social roles. So that is what we call identification. And a little add-on, I also have here normative conformity. So this involves changing one's behavior in order to fit in with a group. So simply, it is also defining the conformity itself, that which you tend to change your own behavior for you to fit in with a group. And lastly, we have informational conformity. So this happens when a person lacks the knowledge and looks to the group for information and direction. So in this type of conformity, we tend to look further knowledge for us to have an information, for us to have an idea to the specific content, and for us to have a greater direction. So in which this is what we call informational conformity. Before I'm going to move on to the examples of conformity, if some of you ask, why do people conform? So there are three main reasons as to why people conform. First is we have normative social influence. Second is informational social influence. And third is we have social impact theory. So in the first reason we have is a normative social influence. This type of social influence is associated most commonly with compliance. So simply, like going along with the majority, even if you don't accept their beliefs, because you just want to be accepted. And second is we have the informational social influence. This is where someone conforms to view because they believe to be correct. This is associated with internalization. And lastly, we have the social impact theory. So in this theory, developed by Latané to explain why people conform in some situations, but not others. So we have here the key principles like number, strength, and immediacy. So those are some of the key principles that is based on this social impact theory. And if you want to ask as well, is conformity a good thing? So by being conformists, we copy the things that are popular in the world, and those things are often good and useful. So for example, most people don't understand how germs can cause disease, but they know they should wash their hands after using the bathroom. So especially that we are all facing this new normal. In the middle of this pandemic, we also have to know and be aware of the specific things. So maybe it could be a good thing that we could conform and we could copy those specific popular things in the world. And if you want to ask as well, why is conformity bad? So conformity creates a change in behavior so that people in the group behave in the same way. And as much as this is a good thing, and it's also bad, there are so many people in this world that do not feel like others, yet they are, in a way, obliged to follow society's norm. So for me, and just a little reminder, you don't have to conform or to change your specific behavior just for you to fit in the group. Be yourself, be authentic enough. I mean, it depends on the specific situation that you are handling in. So, as much as possible, you conform the good things beyond the bad things. So, that's why we ourselves, we are unique. So, we don't have to be that certain person to copy that certain person. So, be who you are. Be authentic. And beyond what I'm saying is that conformity in other words, might be dangerous because it doesn't let you see past the simplicity of like the simplicity of who you are, because how comfortable you feel and what you know. So therefore you fall into the traps prepared for you by the illusion of well-being in which you choose to live. So there's no way and there's no such thing for you to change your own behavior just for you to fit in the group. And yet, you yourself, you must be authentic enough. Next we have here the examples of conformity. So first we have is going to a party or social gathering. Ooh, I know every one of you likes to go to party. Just kidding. So, because you're expected to go even though you're not up for it. So, in this situation, you really don't need to go to that specific party or social gathering if you don't like to. But you tend to have conformance. That's why you're expected. And this is also a peer pressure or a yielding peer groups, which another way that if you are invited to your friend or somewhat like you're connected to, so that's why you're expected to go to this party or even though you're not up for it. We have here the next example is getting a tattoo. Speaking of tattoo, I know a lot of teenagers nowadays wants to have tattoo and even piercing as well because it's what everyone is doing. But you know that tattoo is also called as rebellious. In other words, getting tattoo is no longer a sign of rebellion, but rather a sign of conformity. So we see as getting a tattoo as an example of conformity because so many people are seeking to strike out against this thing just to have one. And getting a tattoo is no longer rebellious, but in a way it is called conformity. And the last example we have is going to college and getting a degree, when what you really want to do is enjoy the freedom of becoming an online entrepreneur. So it's a majority that a lot and all of the people going to college and after that getting a degree, a diploma and such. And it's also a thing where your parents, your relatives, your friends expected you to do so and to have one in the future. And in this type of conformity is an example of identification because it occurs what expected of you based on your social roles. So even though you don't like that thing, even though what you really want to do is enjoy the freedom of becoming an online entrepreneur, and it's a thing that you're expected to have. That's why you tend to go to college and get a degree, a diploma and such, even though that's not the thing you really want to do, but just for you to fit into the social group. And those are the examples of conformity. So guys, remember, from the word conformity, it is the most general concept and refers to any change in behavior caused by another person or group, just for you to fit into that specific group. And in other words, you really don't have to change your own behavior just for you to be accepted to that specific group. Because showing the real you and being authentic enough is the best way, rather than conforming yourself to be accepted in that specific group. But there's no question that if you want to conform, especially to the good things, for you to have knowledge and to gain ideas, to be plotted to a right direction. So just always remember that use the word conformity.
And good afternoon, everyone. This is Clifford Reponte, and I will be talking about deviance. So what is deviance? Deviance is the fact or state of departing from usual or accepted standards, especially in social or sexual behavior. It is different from what is considered to be normal or morally correct. So what is the usual accepted standard in society? We have social norms, right? So deviance in this definition means when you violate norms of the society, such as folkways or mores. But deviance also means violating a formally enacted rule, example crimes. When you violate law, that's already an act of deviance. Now let's talk about the examples, the types of deviance. Now let's talk about two types of deviance. First is formal deviance. It is described as a crime which violates laws in a society. So again, when you violate a certain law, that is already an act of formal deviance. Examples are robbery, theft, rape, murder, and assault. Second one is informal deviance. Examples of informal deviance are picking one's nose, belching loudly, or standing unnecessarily close to another person. Like for informal deviance, guys, right? You can feel it. Like when a stranger stands close to you, usually in public areas, you would feel uncomfortable. You would think that this person is planting some plans toward you or other uncomfortable thoughts that run through your mind, right? So that is already an act of unwritten rules of social life. Next one is picking your nose or picking one's nose, which means inappropriate for society since aside from it is an incorrect hygiene, that is also unaccepted by society. Hence, informal deviance are only minor violations that break unwritten rules of social life. Like for example, for examples for that are mga norms, folkways, or mga mores. So this afternoon, I will be talking about social control in becoming a member of society. So I want everyone to listen. Definition: the rules and standards of society that circumscribe individual action through the inculcation of unconventional sanctions and the imposition of formalized mechanisms. So we have our example of this social control is our government here in the Philippines. Our government implements laws or policies to our society to enforce and exercise a social control. Our government look after their people to ensure that everyone follows and abide the laws and policies of the community. They are also giving punishments to those who try to disregard or break the orders of the law and policies. If proven guilty of such misbehavior, chances are criminal cases and imprisonment. And social control has two types, which are formal control and informal control. Now let's talk about formal social control. Formal social control is implemented by authorized agents, including police officers, military officers, and others. It is carried out as a last option at some places when the desired behavior is not possible, though where formal control is practiced varies with countries. So, at the latter part of this, I will be providing an example for this, for the formal social control, but in this definition, it says that formal control is settled formally by those people in authority. For instance, that there are troubles in a certain area, they are the ones in charge for that settlement. Moving on to informal social control, it is exercised by a society without stating any rules or laws. It is expressed through norms and customs. Traditional societies mostly embed informal social control culture to establish social order. So I will be giving an example for this later on. So here we go with the examples. First is formal social control example. This example is policing because it can see in the sidewalk area and it is ordered by the law. So it says no dogs or animals in play parks. And in addition to that, example for formal control is hitting. When you are physically hit by someone, then police officers or those officers who are timely nearby to the incident may settle the problem. And later on, when the victim insists for a charge, the attending police officers may assist you in raising the situation to the formal trials. And he may file a case for the injury. Particularly for the injury, it is in Article 263, which states serious physical injury. So that is how a formal example, formal social control is taken control by the officers or those people in authority. An example for the informal social control, this example is community pressure, like rally, that has a problem in community that belongs to the government. Rally is actually an example of informal social control since this is one act of norms. There is a rally when the society or citizens try to raise their unheard voices or claims. For instance, those people who rally in UP Cebu before because they disagree about the implementation of anti-terror law, as this could result into abuse of power to the law enforcers. So that's what they were saying.